Fight Club? Is chaos the only way to freedom? Every great film hides a question no one dares to ask. What if your dreams are more real than your life? What if madness is just freedom wearing a different mask? Welcome. You're not here just to watch a movie. You're here to think it. Let's begin with a man who has everything and nothing. He lives in a perfectly furnished apartment filled with furniture from the IKEA catalogue. He owns a couch, a glass table, a designer lamp, each item carefully chosen to project an image of success, stability, even happiness. But inside, he's hollow. He can't sleep. He attends support groups for diseases he doesn't have, just to feel something, anything real. He cries in the arms of strangers because for the first time he feels seen, not as an employee, not as a consumer, but as a human being in pain. This is the world David Fincher's Fight Club drops us into, a world not of dystopian futures or alien invasions, but of our own late capitalist present. A world where identity is bought, not built, where freedom is sold back to us as a product, and where the only rebellion left seems to be total self-destruction. But is that really freedom, or just another kind of prison? The film's protagonist, unnamed, deliberately anonymous, embodies what existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called bad faith. He lives as if his life is predetermined by the roles society has assigned him: office drone, credit card holder, loyal customer. He doesn't choose his life, he inherits it from advertisements, from job descriptions, from the silent pressure of normalcy. Sartre argued that human beings are condemned to be free, that we are always free to choose, even when we pretend we're not. But our narrator refuses that freedom. He outsources his identity to brands. His sense of self is assembled like flat-pack furniture. Follow the instructions. Insert tab A into slot B and voila, you're a person. Until Tyler Durden shows up. Tyler isn't just a second personality. He's the id unleashed, the raw, unfiltered will to exist without apology. He smokes, he fights, he makes soap from human fat, and he tells our narrator, "You are not your job. You are not how much money you have in the bank. You are not the car you drive. You're not your fucking car keys." It's a line that echoes through dorm rooms and internet forums decades later. But Tyler isn't offering liberation. He's offering annihilation, and that where Fight Club stops being a cool guy fantasy and starts becoming a philosophical nightmare. At first, Fight Club seems like salvation. Men gather in basements to beat each other bloody, not out of hatred, but out of a desperate need to feel. In a world sanitized by comfort and convenience, pain becomes proof of existence. After fighting, the narrator says, everything else in your life gets the volume turned down. This is pure Camus. Albert Camus, in The Myth of Sisyphus, begins with a single question: is life worth living? He argues that the only truly serious philosophical problem is suicide, because if life has no meaning, why endure it? But Camus doesn't advocate for death. He proposes revolt. Not against others, but against the absurd itself, the collision between our hunger for meaning and a silent, indifferent universe. Fight Club, in its early stages, is a form of revolt. It's messy, violent, and deeply flawed, but it's real. The men aren't fighting each other. They're fighting the numbness. They're reclaiming their bodies from the cubicle, their pain from the pharmaceutical ad, their agency from the algorithm of modern life. But here's the trap. Revolt can easily become its own dogma. And when Tyler takes over, revolt becomes revolution, and revolution becomes tyranny. Project Mayhem isn't freedom. It's control disguised as chaos. Tyler's plan to destroy credit card buildings and erase debt records is sold as liberation from the system. But look closer. The members of Project Mayhem wear uniforms. They follow orders without question. They chant slogans. They punish dissent. They've traded one master for another. This is the paradox at the heart of Fight Club. The moment you institutionalize rebellion, you kill it. True freedom can't be commanded. It can't be organized into a movement with ranks and missions. As soon as Tyler starts giving orders, he becomes the very thing he claims to destroy, the authority, the father figure, the god of a new religion. And our narrator, he's no longer choosing, he's possessed. This is where Sartre's concept of radical freedom clashes with the film's trajectory. Sartre believed that even in the most oppressive circumstances, we retain the power to say no. But the narrator doesn't say no, not until it's almost too late. He surrenders his will to Tyler, believing that chaos will set him free. Instead, it imprisons him in a different kind of script. The film warns us, if you outsource your freedom to a savior, even a savior who looks like you lose yourself. And that brings us to the most disturbing truth. Fight Club reveals Tyler Durden isn't the villain, he's the symptom. The real enemy isn't capitalism or consumerism, or even the emasculated modern man. The enemy is the refusal to take responsibility for one's own existence. Our narrator creates Tyler because he can't face the void alone. He needs a myth, a hero, a prophet, a destroyer, to carry the weight of his despair. But myths don't liberate, they seduce. And Tyler is the ultimate seduction, the fantasy that someone else can do the hard work of becoming yourself. Existentialism demands that we stare into the abyss and build meaning from nothing. That's terrifying. So instead, we invent gurus, ideologies, movements, anything to avoid the terrifying burden of choice. Fight Club shows what happens when we hand that burden to a charismatic voice in our head. Tyler doesn't free the narrator, he colonizes him. And isn't that what every ideology does? Whether it's nationalism, consumerism, or anti-consumerism, it offers a ready-made identity, so we don't have to invent our own. But here's the twist the film hides in plain sight. The narrator is Tyler. Not just psychologically, but ontologically. They are two halves of the same fractured self. This isn't just dissociative identity disorder, it's a metaphor for the modern condition. We are all split between the self we perform for the world, the polite, productive, branded self, and the self we bury, angry, vulnerable, chaotic, alive. Society tells us to suppress the latter. Therapy tells us to integrate it. Tyler tells us to unleash it. But integration isn't destruction. True wholeness doesn't come from blowing up buildings. It comes from holding both truths at once, that we are shaped by systems and that we are still free within them. The narrator's final act isn't joining Project Mayhem or returning to his condo. It's shooting himself in the cheek to kill Tyler. It's a violent, literal act of self-reclamation. He chooses to live with the pain, the ambiguity, the responsibility. And as the credit card buildings collapse behind him, he holds Marla's hand, not as a savior, not as a rebel, but as a flawed human being, finally present in his own life. That's not chaos, that's courage. So is chaos the only way to freedom? Fight Club dares us to ask the question, but it doesn't give us a clean answer. Instead, it shows us the seduction of chaos and its cost. Chaos feels like freedom because it breaks the rules. But real freedom isn't about breaking rules, it's about writing your own. And that requires something far scarier than violence, self-awareness. Camus wrote that the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. But that rebellion isn't external, it's internal. It's choosing authenticity over performance, responsibility over rage, presence over projection. Tyler Durden offers a shortcut, but shortcuts through the self always lead to dead ends. The film's genius is that it lets us fall for Tyler, just like the narrator does. We cheer the fights, we nod at the anti-consumer rants, we feel the thrill of the explosion. And then, slowly, we realize we've been seduced by a monster who looks like us. That's the mirror Fight Club holds up, not to society but to the viewer. Are you fighting for freedom or are you just running from yourself? Let's be honest, Fight Club has been misread for decades. It's been adopted by incels, edgelords, and anti-establishment bros who see Tyler as a hero. But the film is a cautionary tale, not a manifesto. Fincher and screenwriter Jim Uhls didn't make a celebration of toxic masculinity. They made a horror story about what happens when men, starved of genuine connection, purpose, and emotional literacy, turn their pain outward. The basement fights aren't about strength. They're about vulnerability disguised as violence. The men aren't learning to be warriors. They're learning to cry with their fists. But when that vulnerability gets weaponized, when pain becomes a political program, it stops healing and starts destroying. Project Mayhem isn't liberation. It's loneliness with a mission statement. And that's the real tragedy. The men in Fight Club weren't evil. They were lost. And in their search for meaning, they followed a ghost. So what's the alternative? If consumerism is a cage and chaos is a trap, where do we go? Existentialism doesn't offer easy answers, but it offers something more valuable: honesty. Sartre said, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." That means freedom isn't given. It's forged, daily, painfully, imperfectly. You don't find yourself by rejecting society. You find yourself by engaging with it, critically, creatively, compassionately. You don't reclaim your body by beating it in a basement. You reclaim it by listening to it, its needs, its limits, its quiet wisdom. You don't erase your identity by blowing up your past. You rebuild it, brick by brick, with intention. Fight Club shows us the abyss, but it also shows us the rope. Marla Singer. Marla is the film's quiet truth-teller. She's not part of the fantasy. She's messy, real, and unimpressed by Tyler's theatrics. She sees the narrator's fractures and stays anyway. In the end, it's not ideology that saves him. It's human connection. And that's the philosophical heart of the film. Freedom isn't isolation, it's relationship. We are not islands of pure will. We are beings shaped by others, by love, by conflict, by the messy, imperfect web of human contact. Tyler preaches self-reliance, but he's a fantasy of total autonomy, an illusion. No one is self-made, not even rebels. Real freedom means accepting that we need each other, that our identities are co-created, that healing happens in community, not in destruction, but in repair. The narrator's final choice, to hold Marla's hand as the world burns, isn't passive. It's profoundly active. He chooses connection over control, presence over performance, love over ideology. In a world obsessed with grand gestures, Fight Club whispers a radical truth. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is to stay. So, is chaos the only way to freedom? No. Chaos is the scream of a soul that forgot it could speak. Freedom isn't found in the explosion. It's found in the silence after, the moment you realize you're still here and you get to decide what comes next. Fight Club isn't a call to arms. It's a call to awareness. It asks, who are you when the brands fall away, when the job ends, when the noise stops? And more importantly, will you have the courage to answer? Thanks for watching. If this made you think, really think, hit like, subscribe, and join us next time as we dive into another Hollywood classic and the hidden philosophy beneath its surface. Because we don't just watch films, we think them.